Last week in the money line, I went 13-1, folks. The only loss I suffered was Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills defeating the New York Jets on Monday Night Football. I went 3 for 5 in best bets. Now, obviously, again, I bet Arizona taking points. I bet Carolina taking points because up until week 6, I didn't care how bad you were this year in the National Football League, getting points of, over 4 seemed like the play. But last week, we had 14 games. In my opinion, out of those 14 games, the better quarterback won in almost every single game, if not every one of them. Brock Purdy, Geno Smith, it's close. Caleb Williams over Trevor Lawrence. Jalen Hurts over Deshaun Watson. Lamar Jackson over Jaden Daniels. CJ Stroud over Drake May. Joe Flacco over Will Levis, which is an embarrassment to Will Levis. Jordan Love over Kyler Murray. To me, it's closer than most people think, but I'd probably still take Jordan Love right now. Baker Mayfield over Spencer Rattler. Kirk Cousins over Andy Dalton. Justin Fields over Aiden O'Connell. Justin Herbert over Bo Nix. Jared Goff over Dak Prescott. Absolutely, right now, Jared Goff is the better quarterback. Joe Burrow over Daniel Jones. And yes, Josh Allen over Aaron Rodgers. So with that in mind, you guys know, excuse me, that a couple years ago, I was on this streak where, I would take the better quarterback every single week and I would win most weeks. And that's the way that I was picking games and betting games early on this season. And it was backfiring because so many dogs were covering. I think it took 6 weeks, but I think we're finally at that spot to where we can say better quarterback, better team, better coach. I'm picking. So for this week's money line and best bets, I have 4 favorites. I have one dog, and the dog is a very small dog, which most of these are. We have a couple large spreads this week. I would say we have about 4 large spreads. Again, we're getting to the point in the season where the bad teams now know they are bad. We've had a couple of trades go down this week. Obviously, Devontae Adams is out. Amari Cooper is out. He goes to Buffalo. That happened late Tuesday afternoon. And I think it just tells you the Bills are going for it. They host Tennessee this week, and the Browns, well, they host Cincinnati. So let's get right into it. We got the Sean Payton revenge game. Sean Payton going down to New Orleans on a Thursday night. And to me, I don't care what the score of that game was. The Chargers dominated Denver in Denver. Now, the Saints obviously got dominated in Tampa. Spencer Rattler saw the blitz in the second half and just could not handle it. For New Orleans, it sounds like Raheem Shaheed may not play. Chris Olave is not going to play. Now, Denver does not have Patrick Surtain, which will obviously affect their secondary. He's one of, if not the best defensive back in the National Football League. But Sean Payton going into New Orleans, there's the motivating factor for me there. Again, I think the Saints, who started off 2-0, they're a mess at offensive line. Their center's out. I think they're both guards are out. I just mentioned the receivers are out. They're just a complete mess. And for a team that started 2-0, they may finish with 4 or 5 wins. I think the Saints are who we thought they were at the beginning of the year. Yeah, they shocked Dallas in week 2. Yeah, they put on a beating in Carolina in week 1. At this point, outside of the Raiders, who hasn't put a beating on Carolina, I like Denver here. I'm going to bet them Thursday night. I think it's a good spot. Bounce back. And Denver, who's over under on the year, was 5.5, will already have 4 wins going into week 8. I like the Broncos here against spread 2.5. In London, we got New England at Jacksonville. What a mess this is. This could be for the number 1 pick. Jacksonville looked awful in London against the Bears. I suspect they will bounce back. I suspect they will probably play well, but New England does have a pesky defense who got shredded by CJ Stroud last week at home in Drake May's first start. Jacksonville has been horrendous against the pass this year. Can Drake May, who had more passing yards in the game this year in week 6 than Jacoby Brissett had in any of the previous 5, already had more touchdowns this year, 3 last week, Then Jacoby Brissett threw all of this year with two. Um, can New England someone make it close? Probably. I don't know, man. Jacksonville's got the better talent. They're the better team. They're just not winning games. They should have beat Miami week one. You could make an argument they should have beat Cleveland week two. Week three, obviously, they got their doors blown out by Buffalo, but then week four, they could have beat Jacksonville. You're sitting here going, you've seen sometimes Trevor Lawrence be a good quarterback this year, not all the time. This is just an ugly game. I'm not taking it. Okay. Remember going into the year when I said I was going to try to stay away from betting my hometown team, the Philadelphia Eagles, because it's miserable when they lose, and I also lose the bet on the game. I'm breaking my own rule this week again. Again, I said this year I wasn't going to bet a lot of Browns games. That may be changing, betting against the Browns here pretty soon. I said I was gonna try to not bet a lot of Eagles games. I don't know. I like this number here way too much. Philly -3. I just think it's one of the best bets on the board. Listen, I don't care what you guys say about Nick Sirianni taunting fans. I don't care what you guys say about the defense being broken. Philadelphia to me played their best game last week, and I don't care that it was against Cleveland. That offense to me had some signs to build off of, right? I know they only scored 20 points, but from what I'm hearing out of Brandon Graham, what I heard from Jason Kelsey on Monday Night Countdown, what I'm hearing out of Jalen Hurts, out of the veterans on this team is building and they are getting together and they want Nick Sirianni to be himself. There was a fan that posted on Reddit. He was the one that Nick Sirianni was yelling at. He said it was actually awesome. Now, again, whether you believe that story or not, I don't know. But I do know this. Philly, to me, they own the Giants. It's Saquon Barkley's return game. And so, for the first time this year, I'm going to take Philly. They own the Giants. I know the Giants have a good defensive line. Kayvon Thibodeau is not going to play. Jordan Mawaya is down for Philadelphia. We'll have to see, what the status is of Dallas Goedert. On the Mawaya side, I have confidence in Jeff Stoutland that he's going to get, Fred Johnson ready to go. You got A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. I know the Giants secondary played well last week against Cincinnati. I get it. But the Giants, they're a bad offensive team. They don't score touchdowns. And so with that in mind, I'll take Philly. I think they could win by at least three. At the very worst, I think that this could be a push. So I like the number too much. Give me Philly. Bengals at Browns. Listen, historically, Cleveland has owned Cincinnati. I think the Browns are just defeated. 6.5. Maybe there's a world where Nick Chubb comes back and the unexpected happens and Deshaun Watson plays okay. The Browns can actually somehow win this game because they stopped Cincinnati's offense because it's been in a supernatural funk, a lot like Philly. Who would have thought that Bengals Eagles would be flexed out of that national 425 window for Bears Commanders when this season started? But that's where we are for all four of those franchises and their trajectories. I think the Bengals are going to win. Again, there's a lot more smaller lines on the board here. I'll take. Not going to bet it. Next game, we got Tennessee at Buffalo. Buffalo grabbing Amari Cooper. I'm interested to see what Amari Cooper looks like in a Buffalo Bills uniform because we saw the Bills with Stephon Diggs when Joe Brady took over last year. Stephon Diggs was not getting a ton of targets. We've seen Buffalo even without James Cook this past Monday night against the Jets. When the Bills run the football, when they stay balanced, when they use those two tight ends, they are a very dynamic offense. And Amari Cooper, to me, is not going to be the center point. He's not going to be that number one wide receiver. Diggs obviously wants to be that number one receiver. Amari Cooper, to me, is a very high end number two receiver. I've been saying it for years. I think on a very bad team, he could be out your number one, but on a championship team, he's more of a number two. He will be used like a number two here in Buffalo, but I just don't know how much he's going to change life for Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, especially when you're talking about going up against the likes of Baltimore Kansas City in the postseason. He does have one of the most drops, if not the most drops, in the National Football League this year. I think Buffalo's going to kill Tennessee, is my guess. Tennessee's a bad football team. They should kill them. Will Levis will make a mistake, but again, 8.5. I would rather bet smaller numbers, so I'm staying away. Speaking of staying away, this is definitely, in my opinion, a stay away game. Dolphins at Colts. Anthony Richardson coming back for Indianapolis. Anthony Richardson, man, he's talented, right? He can make those super throws. I still remember the throw he made week 1 against Houston off his back foot, 65 yards all the way down the sideline. He misses the easy layups. And Miami is coming off a bye. I don't even know who's gonna play quarterback for them. I guess it's Tyler Huntley right now. Who knows? Tua Tagovailoa, I think Miami intends to get him back somewhere between week 8 and week 9. And with the Jets struggling, Miami, I think, is gonna try to make a playoff run here in an AFC where Cleveland is worse than we thought. Jacksonville is worse than we thought. You can make the argument Indy is worse than we thought. You can make the argument Cincinnati is worse than we thought, obviously. The AFC is somewhat down, surprisingly, compared to the NFC. It's the exact opposite of what we thought. Still need a quarterback. Colts at home, I'll take them to win. Again, this is going to be one of those ugly, ugly games. Speaking of not ugly games, though, these next two in the NFC North. First, Texans at Packers. Obviously, Houston going to Green Bay. For me, it's a tough spot. Green Bay is favored by 2.5, obviously, in Lambeau. We've seen CJ Stroud this year struggle a little bit on the road at Minnesota. He was horrendous, but that was also without Joe Mixon. We've seen two different Houston Texans teams this year. The one with Joe Mixon, they can run the football, play action pass. CJ Stroud's been very comfortable. And we've seen the Houston Texans without a run game, and it's not good. I think Jordan Love played his best game of the season last week. Jordan Love is starting to get hot. This game will depend on if Will Anderson and that Houston Texans pass rush can get enough out of that Green Bay passing game to sort of force Jordan Love to be uncomfortable. I don't think Houston can win this thing 35-31. They're probably going to have to win the thing, 23-20. I don't know if they can do that. The line's about right here at 2.5. It shows you even at home, Vegas is giving respect for Houston, but I like Green Bay here to at least win the game. Okay. If Aiden Hutchinson was playing in this game, I would like Detroit over Minnesota. I think the loss of Aiden Hutchinson for the Lions is vastly underrated. I had predicted Aiden Hutchinson to win the Defensive Player of the Year this year. You would know that if you listen to my championship rank show that I do with Josh Unger every Tuesday night in collaboration with Vultures Live, who, by the way, he also picked Hutchinson to win Defensive Player of the Year and Amon-Ra St. Brown to win Offensive Player of the Year. Listen, the Lions last week were toying with the Dallas Cowboys. There's a reason why I picked the Detroit Lions to go win the Super Bowl this year because I think their roster is absolutely loaded. I had said going into the year the Minnesota Vikings I thought would be the best 7-8 win team in the National Football League. I did not know their defense would do this, which is part of the reason why they're 5-0. And they are coming off a bye. They have 2 weeks to prepare for the Detroit Lions. In that scenario, I think it's advantage Minnesota. And these two teams always play close games. They always play shootouts. I think it comes down to who has the ball last. I think the Vikings pass rush is more consistent for this week than the Detroit Lions pass rush is. I got the Vikings winning at home. Not confident about it. Spread's only 2.5. If they do cover, they probably cover by half a point. I think it's a 3-point game either way. Give me Minnesota on a game-winning field goal. Okay, next game. Sorry to my cousin who's a Seattle Seahawks fan. Sorry to my YouTube subscribers who are watching this and are Seahawks fans. I know there's a few of you out there. I like Atlanta this week. I'm sorry, I'm betting a -3. Again, they walloped Carolina in the second half, and I get it. It's Carolina. Seattle, ever since they've stepped up in class in the competition, and yes, they're coming off of that mini bye Thursday night against San Francisco. But ever since they stepped up in class, they have struggled. And they struggled last week defending that Kyle Shanahan outside zone bootleg, scheme on offense. And Zach Robinson in Atlanta runs the same scheme. And every week, Kirk Cousins is getting more and more comfortable. They've been airing the football out more than San Francisco, even. Darnell Mooney, Drake London. Now Kyle Pitts is even somewhat starting to get involved in the passing game. Ray McLeod. They use Bijan Robinson on the backfield. They have Tyler Algier. This Atlanta offense is incredible what they're doing right now, throwing and running the football, moving the football down the field. Seattle's got weapons. I expect this thing to be a shootout. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Kenneth Walker. Both of these teams have good offenses. Both of these teams do not have very good defenses. I think it comes down to who has the ball last. I'll take Kirk Cousins in this game over Geno Smith. I like Atlanta. Again, I think it's very close. This one's going to make me sweat a little bit, but I like Atlanta to cover the 3. Washington should smash Carolina. I mean, 7.5. I probably should take it. The hook lets me stay away. I don't want to get into it here. I think Jaden Daniels rolls here. Commanders win. Not a lot to say. I am going to take the Rams. It's my one big bet of the week. I like the Rams, and the reason is because they're coming off a bye. And the Raiders have traded away Devontae Adams. They're a mess. Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew. It doesn't matter who the quarterback is. Max Crosby seems like he's pounding. He seems like he wants to be on his way out of the city. Again, you got Sean McVay coming off a bye. I get it that those wide receivers are not back yet for the Rams, but Stafford, Kyron Williams, and I think this is the one game where the Rams' lack of weapons and the Rams' particularly lack of offensive line may not matter. I think the Raiders are right up there right now with Carolina, Cleveland, Jacksonville, New England. Maybe you want to throw the Giants in there as an absolute mess of an organization. I like the Rams. This number came in at 5. I liked it better when it was at 5. I think they can win by at least a touchdown. And again, the hook would make you stay away from the Commanders game. At least, if the Rams win by 7, it's a push. So it's one of those weird lines where this week I have an opportunity to have 3 pushes. It's rare. We always get the half point, but this week I'm taking, no hooks. Besides, Denver 2.5. And the other hook I want to take here is Kansas City. I have no idea how they're dogs to San Francisco. The Niners are 3-3. They got boat raced by Minnesota in week 2. They lost to Arizona because they didn't have a kicker. And so for me, the Niners this year, even against Seattle in the second half, they struggle to move the football. And I know it's a revenge factor. The Niners. Yeah, you know what else? Kansas City owns San Francisco, and Andy Reid is coming off a bye. Kareem Hunt, Xavier Worthy, they're still rolling. Obviously, the big man there, Travis Kelce, and that Kansas City defense with Steve Spagnuolo, which I think is arguably the best defense in the league. San Francisco's defense has been a little oil leaky this year. I think Mahomes in Kansas City, especially without Christian McCaffrey, which is the one game where I think San Francisco needs him. I think they struggle a little bit offensively. I like the Chiefs. They're going to be pissed off that they're dogs in this game because they should not be dogs. They're the better football team. Give me Kansas City. There was another game here. I was thinking of taking the Jets because I don't know what the hell was going on with Pittsburgh. Justin Fields, Russell Wilson. Now, I have a theory about the Justin Fields Russell Wilson scenario, and I don't know if anybody on television has even said this yet. For the Pittsburgh Steelers, as I said going into the offseason, if Justin Fields played more than 50% of the snaps this year for the Steelers, they would have to give up a fourth round pick for him, or if he does not, they only have to give up a sixth round pick back to Chicago for him. Is that the reason, and not just because they promised Russell Wilson the starting job? Is that the real reason why Mike Tomlin wants to go back to Russell Wilson here in week 7? I don't know. I know the Steelers are 4-2. They're not a good 4-2 team. The Jets defense got embarrassed with interim head coach Jeff Albrecht. That was the worst that they've looked defensively in over 3 years. And it's not a coincidence to me that Robert Saleh leaves and the defense looks like a mess, even though Jeff Albrecht was calling the defense when he was the defensive coordinator. But now Aaron Rodgers has Devontae Adams. We talked about the Green Bay Jets the other day. Devontae Adams, Nathaniel Hackett, Alan Lazard, Randall Cobb, obviously Aaron himself. This was in the works for a while. We saw Devontae Adams pop up on the Pat McAfee show last week. So, with all of that in mind, Jets are desperate. They need a win. I think Aaron Rodgers, who's always had respect for Mike Tomlin, I think the Jets put down the Steelers here in Pittsburgh. And for the second time in 3 weeks, Pittsburgh loses a home primetime game. Listen, they're not playing Justin Herbert on one foot. They're not playing Kirk Cousins on one leg. They're not playing Bo Nix. They're not playing Aiden O'Connell. They're playing Aaron Rodgers this week, who is still, in my opinion, barely maybe an above average quarterback, yes, but he is still Aaron Rodgers. And the only way the Steelers win this game is if TJ Watt has a DPOY performance against that Jets offensive line. Baltimore at Tampa. It's a very tricky game. Tampa is dogs by 3.5. Baltimore, their weakness we know is their secondary. We know Baker Mayfield and how hot he can be, and Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, and the running backs that they've got. They even mixed in, that one kid last week that went crazy for them. They still got Rashad White there. Tampa's loaded offensively. I just think, again, it's Baker Mayfield against the Ravens, who he struggled with his whole career, and it's Lamar Jackson against the NFC. I think Tampa's ability to score keeps this game close. I'm very interested to see Todd Bowles' blitzing style, how it works against Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. I still like the Ravens here to win this game. And then finally, a very tricky game. ESPN Plus, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. out in the desert. Chargers at Cardinals. This is a weird one for me. Arizona is one of those teams I can't figure out. I told you on Tuesday they're going to have a good week. They're going to have a bad week. They got blown out last week at Green Bay. The Chargers are not a very explosive offense. I think Jonathan Gannon is going to figure out a way to grind out a win here. Kyler Murray will play well. Now, this is all hinging, in my opinion, on Marvin Harrison Jr.'s ability to play. If Marvin Harrison does not play this week, I will reserve the right to switch my pick from the Chargers to Arizona because I think he makes all the difference in the world for that offense. Him going down early was a big factor to me in Green Bay, destroying Arizona. So if Harrison plays, I like Arizona. If he doesn't, I'll take the Chargers. 2.5 points. Again, I think this is going to be a weird game. I'm going to stay away. So to recap, I like Denver on the road, Sean Payton's return against New Orleans. Jacksonville in London against New England. Philly on the road against the Giants. Cincinnati on the road against Cleveland. Buffalo at home against Tennessee. Indy at home over Miami. Green Bay at home over Houston. Minnesota at home over Detroit. Atlanta at home over Seattle. Washington at home over Carolina. Rams at home over Vegas. Kansas City on the road over San Francisco. Jets on the road over Pittsburgh. Baltimore on the road over Tampa. And for now, as long as Marvin Harrison is playing, Arizona at home against the Chargers. My 5 best bets for week 7 of the 2024 NFL season are I like Denver Thursday night, weighing the 2.5 on the road against the Saints. I like my Eagles covering 3 against the Giants. I like Atlanta at home to cover 3 against Seattle. I like the Rams by a touchdown against the Las Vegas Raiders. And finally, I don't understand how they are dogs here. Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift, they shake it off in the Super Bowl rematch against San Francisco. Like that clip from the Brands World podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brands World podcast right here on YouTube.